I'm becoming popular. Lar. Hey guys, what's up? My name is Dom. Welcome back to my channel. If you're new to my channel, I typically make bookish content, movie content, and anything else in between because I like to do whatever I want on this channel, and tonight is going to be bookish content. For today's video, we are going to go over the 12 books I read in the month of November, which is insane. There is so much to talk about. Sorry, I'm just like looking at my notes. So without further ado, let's just jump right into the video. So the first book I want to talk about, I actually started in October, but I didn't get to finish until November, and it's a sequel book. I read The Outside by Laura Bickle. This is the second book of a duology. The first book is called The Hollowed Ones. I read that in October. It is about a girl who is Amish, and she's on her way to Rumspringa, but it's paused because vampires are amok. And when I saw that, I was like, what the fuck? So I had to read it, and I really actually liked The Hollowed Ones. I had a lot of fun with it. So I was hoping to have fun with The Outside that I can't really give a synopsis for because the synopsis relies on spoilers of the first book. But I feel like, given the title, you can kind of guess what's going on. I will say right off the bat, I didn't like this. I didn't love this as much because I liked the book. I just didn't love it as much as the first one. I think one of the reasons I loved the first one so much was because it was scandalous by Amish standards. For me, no, but for the Amish, yeah, because part of the book was that, you know, she showed her ankles and it was like a whole thing. The Outside is more of a survival story. She disobeyed her people as much as she possibly could in the first book, so there's not much to do in this one, just survive the outside world. It was still fun. There were still parts that hurt my heart. There were some parts that actually made me very angry. And I really like Katie's development in this book. Throughout this whole duology, she is expanding her horizons, because if you don't know about the Amish, they have a very strict way of looking at God. It would take a whole other video to describe how they view him. But part of this duology, she's meeting an English man, English as in a non-Amish guy, and living in what they consider the English world. Obviously, he's going to have much more experience than she does. So her views are changing, and her view on God does change throughout this book, but I feel like by the end of the series, she is still staying true to herself in a way. She still believes in God, and I actually respect that about this story, because I feel like usually in stories like these, the uber religious character becomes an atheist, but I do actually like that she still believes in God. She just realizes there's more than one way to worship him. And not only did I like her development, but I like the love interest as well, whose name I can't remember all of a sudden. But, you know, being from two different worlds, there's things that he's good at that she can't do, and vice versa. There's things that she's good at that he can't do. And I thought the two played off each other very well. Near the end of the book, there's a science versus religion discussion, and I really liked how that was handled. Our main character, Katie, wasn't forced to do anything. She had all the knowledge she could. She had informed consent, basically, and she was able to use this information to think about what she wanted, and the choice she made at the end of the book was truly her own decision, and I thought that was a perfect way of showing how much she has grown. And I like the other discussion about how our worlds are evolving with religion, with science, etc., and what happens when these, you know, worlds, these cultures evolve, whether they want to or have to, and in this book's specific case, they kind of have to. And I really do like the love interest. They actually had a lot of cute moments. So this book was not bad. It's just because it wasn't as scandalous as the first one. I went into this with different expectations, and those expectations weren't met, but I also didn't hate the book. So in the end, I gave this 3.5 out of 5 stars. Next, I continued with a manga series, and the manga I've been reading is Happiness by Shuzo Oshimi, and I started November with volume 7. And I cannot give you the synopsis for this one because that would be in major spoiler territory. But Happiness is about a boy named Makoto Okazaki, and one day he is turned into a vampire. If you've been on the channel for a while, you know I've been having mixed feelings about this series because some volumes I was really liking, others I thought were just okay. I have been oscillating. Volume 7 is definitely one of my favorites. So there's a cult happening now at this point in the story, and if you know me, I love a good cult. So I was really enjoying this volume because of that, and it was just so interesting noticing the author's inspiration, and I don't know if he was like inspired by the things I'm noticing or they're just coincidences, but I noticed similarities to several other real life cults. My only issue is that at this point of the series, this part does feel like it's in a completely different story than what we were reading in the first 5 volumes, but nonetheless, like, think about this by itself. I really enjoyed it, so I gave it 4.5 out of 5 stars. Then I read volume 8, which I also vastly enjoyed. We get background on the cult leader and talk about disturbing, and it's amazing art as always. This series definitely does have some amazing art, and my favorite thing about it is that this author is a less is more type. Like, there's not a lot of background going on. A lot of the panels are close-up of our characters with minute changes of facial expression, but it's just enough detail to truly see what they are feeling. I gave this volume 4.5 out of 5 stars. Then I read volume 9, and in this volume, a character that had disappeared for a while comes back, and we open up with a discussion about what humans find fascinating, and just, you do truly have to find what makes you happy in life, and oftentimes it is the little things. And the art goes hard. I gave this 4 out of 5 stars. Then I also continued with my Princess Diaries adventure because I started reading these books, I want to say September, I think it was, and I thought the books were hilarious. They were kind of messy and definitely outdated, but pretty funny. And my library has all the audiobooks, so why not listen to them? So I did listen to Princess in Love, which is the third one. And in this one, Mia's dating a guy she doesn't really like while she's madly in love with her best friend's brother. It's the Christmas season. People are passing out gifts. She's getting like secret messages. It's a whole thing. This book was so fucking messy for no reason. It was funny. I laugh out loud when I listen to these that like Mia is so dramatic, and it does throw me back to my high school days. I feel like she has her moments where she's fucking annoying, but all teenagers do. Like, she's a very realistic teenager to me. Just this plotline as itself was not my favorite, so I couldn't really get into it like I could the first 2 books, so I did give this one 3 out of 5 stars. Then I read Happiness Volume 9 by Shuzo Oshimi, which is the very last volume. And I do have more thoughts on this one than I do the rest, simply because I want to talk about the series as a whole. But when it comes to this specific volume, I definitely thought the first half was stronger than the last half, because the first half is still dealing with that cult. And it's a very realistic depiction in what it does to people and how it traumatizes people. And I do appreciate how it was paralleling earlier chapters. The ending itself was satisfactory. It just wasn't perfect. I am content with it, I think. But I just do have a few issues with it, just because I thought Okazaki and his love interest, that relationship definitely needed more development, because I thought they jumped into it kind of, I don't want to say randomly, but pretty fast. And the ending did leave me with a lot of questions that I think can't go unanswered, because I feel like earlier in the series there was established lore, and then the last volume kind of threw some of that away. So I'm wondering how certain things are working. And the 2 halves of the series, the last 6 volumes take place after a time skip, a 10-year time skip. So the second half feels like a different story than the first one. And I looked up what people are saying online, and it seems like a lot of people have that opinion. Like, it just feels like 2 different stories. Personally, I do like the story of the second half better, and I think that's just because I like cults so much. But the popular opinion seems to be that the first half is better. But I have no regrets reading this. Like, it's not the best series I've ever read, but it is okay overall, because I want to read more of this author, and I heard this one is kind of his least favorite work, so it can only get better from here. But I gave this volume 3.5 out of 5 stars. Then I read Princess in Waiting by Meg Cabot, which is the 4th book of the Princess Diary series. And in this one, she is finally in Genovia to give her speech and make her debut. And she is in love with Michael. She's actually, spoiler alert, she is dating Michael in this, her best friend's brother. And then spends the entire book wondering if he loves her or not. This is definitely my least favorite of the 4 I've read. Mia was actually really fucking annoying in this book, especially the first half when Michael wasn't with her. So all of her diary entries were just nothing but Michael. And I do understand she's like 14, 15 years old at this point. And I do feel like there is a fine line between acting like a normal teenager versus being absolutely insufferable. And I feel like that fine line was crossed. I've seen teenagers act like this before. But me personally, I thought it was annoying when I was 14, and I think it's even more annoying now at 27. She does get so much better when she does see Michael again, so the second half of this book is not as unbearable as the first half, but by that point I was already over it. I wanted the book to be done. The only thing I really liked is the references to the Disney movies. I thought that was funny, and I mean, there were certain parts of the book that did make me laugh. So I ended up giving this 2 out of 5 stars. So then I started a web comic series, and this is much longer than I thought it was. I had plans to finish it in November, but a singular volume was like 400 pages, so I only read the 1 volume. But that is The Horizon Volume 1 by J.H. This is about 2 kids, a boy and a girl, who meet during the apocalypse. I don't even know where to begin with this. It is definitely one of the best books I read so far this year. There is a lot going on. This Volume 1 is only 7 chapters. I think the story in total is only 21 chapters, but they're very long chapters, and because like I said, these 7 chapters total is like 400 pages, and it can be triggering. One of the main triggers I want to warn about is sexual assault. There is one chapter where the panel's not graphic, but it does show enough for you to know what's going on. So I just want to give a fair warning for that. Warning for violence, because it can get pretty violent at times. I think those are the 2 main ones for sure. The first thing I noticed about this series is that the story is truly in the art. There is not a lot of dialogue. So actually for me personally, interesting enough, it took me longer to read this than it would have if it did have more dialogue, because dialogue is easier for me to process than just a picture. I'm always scared I'm going to miss a tiny detail, so when I'm reading graphic novels, manga, whatever you want to call these, and there's a panel that's all art, I tend to stay on that page for a while, like truly looking at it and all the fine details, because I don't want to miss anything. And especially for this, when there's not a lot of verbiage going on. And my favorite panels tend to be the empty ones. There's a few where he'll show like just this vast sense of nothingness almost. Like the boy and the girl are drawn so small in the corner of a panel. And it's not like the panel has a lot of detail. They're walking on an empty street. And it truly gives a sense of loneliness and foreboding. I don't know, there's something about this manga series or webcomic series that chills me. I'm not scared while I'm reading it, but it's when I'm thinking about it that I'm very uncomfortable, which is the point. Like, you're supposed to be uncomfortable, and it's getting across well. It makes me feel lonely, like I'm the only one on this planet. It makes me feel like something's wrong. It definitely gives me a sense of dread. And so far in this volume, it's begging the question, are humans causing their own suffering? So I'm excited to see what the next 14 chapters are going to give me. This is definitely one of those books where I feel like in the moment I couldn't really gather my thoughts. It wasn't until I was done with the volume and sat there and truly thought about it that I came to these conclusions and that I did really enjoy this. I ended up giving this 5 out of 5 stars. The next book I read has a very long title, and that is The Scary Book of Christmas Lore, 50 Terrifying Yuletide Tales from Around the World by Tim Rayborn. I went to Salem, Massachusetts earlier this year, and there's a bunch of shops that are geared towards paganism, and one shop in particular, they had a lot of books about Yuletide. So this year for Christmas, I was looking into that, and this is one of the books that came up. I will say right off the bat, one of the reasons I didn't truly enjoy this is because I went into it with the wrong idea. When I read that title and the synopsis, quite frankly, I was expecting these to be 50 short stories, but this book is actually non-fiction. Each chapter is about a real mythological creature, whether that's Krampus, some of the women associated with Krampus, La Befana, just creatures all over the world. So that's fine. I just kind of had to switch gears and change what I thought about this. But having said that, my dog wants to leave the room. This did feel kind of repetitive, and I hesitate to bring that up as a criticism. I don't think it's the fault of the author per se, because he did say a few times that some of these mythological creatures are going to seem similar, either because it's a coincidence or these creatures were evolutions from other creatures. But it didn't make for a fun and fascinating read. It did get kind of annoying. And there was a lot of forced humor in the narration that I was not liking. It definitely ruined the flow. And just this experience was more so weird than it was terrifying. For a nonfiction book, I'm not really impressed, so I did give this 2 out of 5 stars. And speaking of books that are not impressive, the next one I'm going to talk about is my worst read of 2024. That pissed me the fuck off. And that is The Instructions by Adam Levin. I don't know why Amazon separated this into 2 copies, but as you can see, if it was 1 copy, this is a chunker. This was my big book of the year. I like to read a big book every year. Ever since college, I started with House of Leaves, and I moved on to Les Miserables, to the Divine Comedy. So stuff along that, anything over 1,000 pages is my big book of the year. So what is this about before I get angry? This is about a 10-year-old boy named Urian Maccabee. He is a very troubled boy. He's violent. He's gotten kicked out of 2 schools. The school he's at now is basically his last chance, and even then he's in a very special program called The Cage, which is where just violent and kids who need help, whatever that means to the school, they're secluded into this. They can't talk to each other. They have cubbies, and it's very strict, and it is sequestering. And Gurion wants to fight against that. And not only that, but he also thinks there's a possibility that he is the Messiah of Judaism. This book I'm gonna hold up the one because I'm tired, because I can't do the 2. This book pissed me off so bad. Someone even told me to DNF it. Olivia Savannah told me to DNF it, and I did not, because I'm nosy and I have regrets, because I did not like this. I was not feeling this one at all until like the very last 2 pages. That's why I continued, because I'm just so nosy. But as a whole, I wasn't really feeling this. A big part of that is the writing style. And like, this is the point, so part of this is just the fact it's not the book for me, but either way, it gets so repetitive after a while, and it feels like Gurion is just talking in circles. And in my opinion, this book is much longer than it needs to be. We can easily hack at least 200 pages off. And the main reason I just don't like this book is I do not like our main character. I actually can't stand Gurion. He is a jackass. He is incredibly pretentious, both in his actions and the narration, and he clearly hasn't grown as a person either, because not only is he pretentious as a 10-year-old, but in his narration, he's writing this book because the instructions is his scripture. He's writing this as an adult, and it's shown that he has not grown at all. Him as a character, even if it was the point, it still feels very 2D and static, and that's not what I like in books. Him being a jackass and pretentious, that is part of the point of the book. Like, he's not supposed to be a good person, and typically I don't mind unlikable characters. Like, I've read and enjoyed some books that starred some terrible people, but clearly Gurion is the type that is just that I just do not find compelling. One of the things that really threw me off about Gurion too is it's often told to us that he is smart and wise beyond his years. He's 10 years old, but I think at the school they have him in the 7th grade. If you're not in the US, the 7th grade is typically for 12 to 13-year-olds. He's had a high vocabulary since he was 4 years old. He's a very troubled but smart kid. But it's also kind of hard to believe he's supposed to be like the smartest in the room and wise beyond his years when everyone else in the book talks like he does. Like, we're constantly told by other characters he's so smart and even smarter than them, but I'm like, you guys have the same vocabulary he does, the same sentence structure. Like, you all talk the same. They all seem too old for what they are, because all his friends are like 12, 13 years old, but I constantly forgot this is elementary school. I felt like I was reading characters that are 18 years old, so that really threw me off. And like I said, I stuck it out for the ending. I read online that the ending is pretty good, that the second half of this book is better than the first half, but I am not impressed. I didn't think the ending was worth it. I knew where it was going. It's pretty obvious. I didn't find it fascinating. I didn't find any of it compelling. Like I said, him as a character, Gurion as a character felt very stagnant. He performed some type of miracle at the end, and like, I knew something like that was coming, but at the same time, it still felt like it came out of left field. And out of everyone in this fucking book, there was one singular character that I found compelling, that I could connect to, and even then that's not saying much, because Jelly is by far not the best character I've ever read. I think I just happen to like her. If she was in any other novel, I would think she's forgettable and she definitely would not be a favorite, but because I just hated everyone else so much and didn't like reading from them, she was just, maybe I like her just because she was the most bearable. I don't know if I'm like missing something or if this book just truly wasn't for me, but I don't understand the high reviews this book has. It's getting compared to Infinite Jest from what I'm seeing online. I've never read Infinite Jest, but if it's anything like this, I don't think I should, because this book pissed me off so much, and I'm making it the worst book that I read this year simply because of how angry it made me. This book pissed me off, and not in a good way, and I'm annoyed and I'm mad at myself for not DNFing. This book was a waste of my time. It was a waste of money, and because it pissed me off that much, Out of all 120 plus books I read, this was the absolute worst. 1 out of 5 stars. The next book I read I found on a whim and it emotionally destroyed me, and that is Where Wolves Don't Die by Anton Treuer. This is about a high schooler named Ezra. His father is scared that he's going to be accused of a crime he didn't commit, so his father sends him away to his grandfather, and him and his grandfather spend time together by trapping, by hunting, just doing what his family has been doing during the winter months for years. Ezra is Native American. He is part of the Ojibwe tribe, so that does come into play in this book a lot. And this was a really fascinating book, not only because it's a young kid bonding with his grandfather, but I feel like it also served as a lesson for Ojibwe culture. We learned about their way of life on the res, what they do to earn money. We learn about their folklore. Like, one of the biggest motifs is wolves. Ezra is part of the wolf clan, and we learn about the history of that. There's a valley about elk that we learn about. And then we also learn about their history, not only as Ojibwe themselves, but what the white men did to them and how their tribe was affected over the centuries. So this book can read like a history textbook at times, but for me that was okay, but I know some people feel a certain way about it. And like I said, Ezra was part of the wolf clan, so there is a wolf motif throughout the story. There are constant references to those legends, and I did like how they reflected on Ezra's real life, and like they paralleled basically, and that was really cool to see because something would happen to Ezra and I was always like, hold on, wait a minute, I remember y'all talking about something similar to this. And I had an aha moment at one point too where I finally realized what the title meant, and I really do like the meaning of the title and how it tied into the story. I think everything tied together well in the end. Like I said, this emotionally destroyed me, so I was sobbing just because I thought it was a beautiful ending. It was a bittersweet ending because when I realized what his grandfather represented, whether it was towards like his personal life or how he was juxtaposed to the Ojibwe legends, or how his grandfather, because at one point, you know, his grandfather has a traumatic backstory, how his grandfather was trying to fix that. It was just, it hurt my heart. It was just an emotional roller coaster. And man, there's something about just old men crying that get me crying. As a whole, this is a very beautiful story. That being said though, I did not give this 5 out of 5. I did dock it a star. The thing that was really throwing me off, there's 2 things. One, this book tends to tell more than it shows. It's not a huge problem, and it is the author's first novel, like first fictional novel, so he does have time to fix this. He has time to grow with this. I can kind of forgive it, especially my reaction near the end there. The one thing that did kind of bother me was the dialogue. I have mixed feelings about the dialogue. Some of it is fine, but other dialogue feels very clunky, and it depends on the age of the character. The dialogue I thought was fine was said by the adults. The dialogue that came off clunky was said by the teenagers, so I feel like our author had a hard time imagining how today's teenagers would talk. Some of the clunkiness is forgivable because, again, I listened to this on audiobook, so some of it, it's like, was it clunky or was it just the voice actor not acting it out correctly? Because actually the voice actor, this is read by the author. So I thought that was really cool, but there's definitely times where I think he just couldn't act it out properly, and that affected how I heard the dialogue. But then there are other lines that were just straight up clunky. Even the best voice actor couldn't fix that issue. That's my only issue. Other than that, I really did enjoy this book, and actually extra points for mentioning Attack on Titan, because he talked about how he wanted to bring some books to the cabin, and one of those books was Attack on Titan Volume 1. So shout out to you. You as in Ezra and Anton, and the author Anton Treuer, for knowing what that is. In the end, I gave this 4 out of 5 stars. And then the last book I read in November is another book I listened to on Thanksgiving because it was less than 2 hours long, and that is Junie B. First Grader, Turkeys We Have Loved and Eaten and Other Thankful Stuff by Barbara Park. And this novel, Junie B's first grade class is celebrating Thanksgiving. I used to love these books back when I was in first grade. The first Junie B. Jones book I ever read was Junie B. First Grader At Last, and I still remember it to this day. My first grade teacher had us sit on the floor and she read the book to us, and I had been obsessed with them ever since. So I spent from first grade to third grade trying to read as many as I could. And after being emotionally destroyed by Where Wolves Don't Die, I needed a pick-me-up, so I chose this. Plus it was easy, it was funny. It made me laugh out loud a few times, which is shocking given the target audience for this book, but I thought they were hilarious. There's definitely a few, not a few, but like one thing that kind of stood out to me, like, we don't really do that anymore. Her class, half of them dressed like pilgrims, half dressed as Native Americans. which is something American schools used to do. I don't know if they still do that, but it's something I did in first grade. Like, I remember the day I had to wear a bonnet because it was Pilgrim Day, and then the next day we made like the feather headbands. So take that as you will. That is a thing American schools did. So when I read that, I was like, ooh, I don't know. They didn't just do that. They did do good things too. They had everyone in the classroom had to bring a dish from home, and their whole family came, and they just had a Thanksgiving dinner in their class. One activity they had was bringing something from home that they're thankful for. And I just miss fun school activities like that. I don't remember what our Thanksgiving activity was other than, you know, the Pilgrim and Native American Day. But for like Christmas, like, there was one day where we'd spent hours making gingerbread houses, and our parents came to help us with candy and shit. Like, we had pajama day one time where we read Green Eggs and Ham, and we made green eggs and ham. We had pizza parties. And now I'm an adult and life is boring. I don't say boring. I have days where I hate, but like, boring is the last thing I should call them because I'm always on my fucking toes. Life is hard. Life can be miserable. I want to be 6 years old again. All that to say, I gave this book 4 out of 5 stars. So that is it for this video. Let me know down below what books y'all read in November and if you've read any of these and what your thoughts on them are. If you like this video, give it a big thumbs up, comment, subscribe. Y'all know the drill. And without further ado, I'm going to peace out and I'll see you guys later. Ciao, tutti.